Welcome, everybody, to the OFCCP Institute's web chat. I am David Cohen, along with Mickey Silverman, my good friend out in Colorado right now. We're both co-chairs of the Institute. Today, we're going to talk to you a little bit about what's happening with OFCCP, specifically with the sex discrimination regs, the equal pay report, and just some audit trends that we're seeing. So Mickey and I will kind of talk about that. Before we get into those things, wanted to talk to you a little bit about what's happening here at the Institute first, April 28, 29, and 30 here in Washington, D.C. We are having our annual spring event, spring training, just like baseball. But here, day one, we're going to have the OFCCP basics. So that'll just be a course about how to conduct an availability analysis, adverse impact analyses, audits, things like that. And then the next 2 days, we will have our advanced course. We'll be joined by our faculty, along with Consuela Pinto from the Solicitor's Office. For those of you who don't know, the Solicitor's Office is the law firm of OFCCP. So Consuela will be kind of sharing her perspectives on what's happening in terms of the solicitor and OFCCP in terms as it relates to enforcement. Really looking forward to that. We have spots available. Check out our website, the OFCCPinstitute.org, and you can sign up for both the basics class and the 2-day advanced class, and we hope to see you there. The other thing I'll talk to you about is our membership. In 2015, the Institute launched its membership, and that was really out of a request from a lot of the folks that were attending our seminars and webinars. They're saying, hey, are you going to be a membership organization? And ask and ye shall receive. And in 2015, like I said, we now are a membership organization. Lots of benefits to being a member. Check out our website. And then the last thing is the 50th anniversary of Executive Order 11246. That happens on September 24th of this year. The Institute is celebrating, and we are going to have a black tie event at the Ronald Reagan Building here in Washington, D.C., putting together a historical video and a documentary about the program. We have tracked down all of the former heads of OFCCP, the directors, and they will be coming to Washington in May, and we're going to be doing interviews with the directors, and we're going to create a historical video of the program, and that will be at we'll show that at the event. In addition, we're going to take that video, we're going to donate it to the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, as well as giving that to the National Archives, so it'll become a part of history. The other thing to mention, we'll have some key honorees that we're really excited about. We'll announce shortly, but more importantly, we're going to have a scholarship foundation set up. We're going to have an essay contest for high school kids, and they will draft an essay on the significance of the executive order on corporate America and EEO and affirmative action. The 3 winners will be brought to Washington to attend the event, and they will receive a scholarship to college. So we are really excited about that. If you're interested in attending the event on September 24th, once again, check out the website. If you're interested in being a sponsor for that event and a sponsor for the Scholarship Foundation, we are looking for sponsors. So, with that being said, let's get into what's happening with OFCCP. Mick, the sex discrimination regs. I know we are working on comments, and you've been involved in that. Sum up for me what our comments are going to be about. What are some of the concerns that we have?
Yeah. So hello, folks. And just to echo what David mentioned, we're all particularly excited about the scholarship that we're developing around the 50th anniversary. So come join us and come sponsor. There's been a lot going on, Dave, over the last several months. Executive orders, proposed regulations, and it's easy for things to get lost in the mix, one of which I feel for some are the sex discrimination regulations, which right now are in proposed form. The comment period will close on March 31st, the end of this month. These are some pretty long proposed regulations, 100 pages or so, but to distill just a few of the important points that we want to make sure folks understand is out there in a proposed stage. Number one, and this one's kind of fun, the OFCCP has suggested that there could be disparate treatment, a form of discrimination, if the job that you have posted as an employment ad contains the word man in it. So for instance, foreman, lineman, other jobs that traditionally have had that name. Many employers have those. They don't necessarily, hopefully they don't limit the folks who can be in that job to men, but it's a historical, it's a vestigial job title. And so OFCCP has proposed that that gender-specific type of title by itself under the regulations can be discrimination. Here's the challenge for the federal government. They're going to have to change their titles because right now on USA jobs.gov, we have job openings in the federal government that specifically have man in it, such as foreman. I looked at that right before we got on today, and it is up there right now. So that's one thing we'll comment on. That falls under, I think, a little bit of the silly category, but let's talk a little bit more substantively as well. The proposed regs explicitly say that it will prohibit activities including training, networking, mentoring, individual development programs that distinguish in any way on the basis of race or gender. The bottom line here is think about the impact that would have on you, the good affirmative action employer who has established goals for minorities, females, and you have made certain good faith efforts. You can't create good faith efforts that result in an absolute bar to males or to whites, but you've created good faith efforts that take it into account in some way, race or gender into account in some way. And these regulations as proposed appear to say that you can't do that. I think the vision for the OFCCP was that you shouldn't do things that specifically benefit males, but really the way it's written, it can have this unintended effect from an affirmative action perspective. The other one that's really interesting here has to do with pay, wages. And we know that the OFCCP has, with Directive 307 last year and in their enforcement approach, has really been pushing this idea of equal pay for equal work. Now, remember, the OFCCP doesn't enforce the Equal Pay Act. They enforce the executive order, and they say that that's consistent with Title VII and Title VII case law. Well, to read the proposed regs themselves, they appear to say there should be equal wages for equal or similar work, and that's just not what the law requires. I think a very close reading of this may allow us to glean that the OFCCP understands that it's not, strictly speaking, equal pay, but more non-discriminatory pay. But our comment by the Institute is going to clarify the fact that the prohibition is against non-discriminatory pay, not regarding equal pay. And I guess the final thing to mention, and this is a late-breaking development, is in the regulations, the proposed regulations, OFCCP appears to want to put in place a decision that many of you know was before the Supreme Court. It's the Young decision, and it has to do with the Pregnancy Discrimination Act and your potential obligation to accommodate individuals who are pregnant in the same way that you would accommodate others who aren't pregnant. There was a decision just today by the Supreme Court on this, and we are beginning to digest that decision, and we'll see what impact that has on the OFCCP's proposed regulations. But the takeaway for folks is we'll do a comment as the Institute, but you've still got about a week's time. Give this a look and see whether commenting makes sense. That's the regulation, but there are one or two other hot topics that we just want to touch on. And Dave, I know one near and dear to your heart is the proposed equal pay report and the regulations around those. What is the status, my friend?
Yeah, so the comment period closed on the equal pay report. The Institute, we put our comments in. I think our comments were close to 100 pages, including lots of data simulations. One of the biggest concerns that we had about the equal pay report was the idea that you would report on W-2 earnings. And what we felt is just purely from a data analytics standpoint, that presented a lot of problems, right? So Mickey was hired on September 1st, and then resigns 5 days later. He only has 5 days of wages on his W-2 at the end of the year. How could you compare Mickey to someone who has worked for the entire year? That's just one of many problems with W-2 wages. So that was a big thing in our comment. And we were saying to OFCCP, if you're going to put out an equal pay report, we think that they're going to put out an equal pay report, right? I mean, they've got a mandate from the president. You've got a presidential memorandum saying put forward regulations on an equal pay report. We think it's going to happen. We think they're on track to probably finalize a regulation on the equal pay report this fall. But here's the key. We looked at the most recent budget request to Congress for OFCCP that OFCCP put in, and what we found in there was something revealing that the first round of reporting, once the equal pay report is finalized, will be the first quarter of 2017. Not 16, but 17. So they'll pass it this fall, but we'll have a little over a year to get systems in place to get ready to report. Why did they say that? The reason why is they have to build a system to collect that information. So for those of you who file EEO1 and VETS 100 reports, that's not always a smooth transfer of information, and I would assume OFCCP is going to have some struggles as well. So first round reporting for first quarter of 2017. My biggest question yet to be determined, if there's a change in administration to Republican, could we see history repeat itself? Like the Clinton administration, they passed the EO survey. They got one full round in, and then the Republicans killed it. It's a possibility, and only time will tell. So stay tuned on the equal pay report, probably final passage this fall. Mickey, just if you had to pick your number one, let's talk briefly about audits. What's your number one thing you think contractors should think about as it relates to audits?
It's a good question, Dave. So in the area of audits, the biggest change we've seen recently is a new scheduling letter. That letter went into effect in October of last year, and there are wide-ranging changes that have an impact on employers generally. But the area that's most interesting, and I think the area that creates the greatest potential exposure for employers, is in the area of compensation. So under the old letter, Item 11 allowed employers to put together summary compensation data, generally at the base comp level is what most employers did, into groupings that were, in the employer's opinion, most consistent with its compensation process. Item 19 in the new scheduling letter completely changes the game. You're no longer asked to, or allowed to for that matter, group comp information in a summary format. Instead, you're required to provide a separate line of information for each employee included in the affirmative action plan. And you are asked to provide, in a separate field of information, each separate component of compensation for at least most employers. So for instance, base comp, bonus, commission, incentive comp, most recent merit increase, overtime dollars earned. These are asked for as separate components of pay on an individual basis for each employee. And this really does change the game. Now, the OFCCP is still just starting to figure this out. Many employers are still, we are in some instances still, submitting just base comp information, waiting for the OFCCP to come back and ask for more. But increasingly, we're seeing the OFCCP ask for more, and I expect that's more to come. So this creates a new horizon for employers where they need to think about what pay differences may exist in bonus, separate from base comp, separate from commissions, and also with that data aggregated into a total comp number that would allow the OFCCP to analyze each of the components and then in the aggregate. This is a real change. That's the bigger piece on pay. One subset within that is the OFCCP's focus on what we call steering. Steering is a theory of discrimination that basically stands for the idea that the employer brings certain biases into play in the decisions it makes, most often in hiring, but perhaps also in promotion and other selection. And the concept is that employers will steer, let's say, males and females into traditionally male and female jobs, at least the ones the employer thinks of as traditionally male or female. OFCCP has gotten a lot of traction with steering over the last year or so, several big settlements. Steering is really more of an allegation of selection discrimination, but the OFCCP has, in essence, recast it. They've dressed it up as compensation discrimination. And that's consistent because the OFCCP's intense focus in pay really leads them to look at almost any type of discrimination issue as a potential pay issue. So those are the two areas I think employers should be paying the most close attention to when it comes to compensation. But another area I think is veterans and 503 compliance. So Dave, you tell us under the new scheduling letter, what type of requirements are there and what should employers be thinking about?
Yeah, so with as it relates to 503 and VEVRA and the new scheduling letter, OFCCP is now asking for your Subpart C analytics, along with some of the other requirements. But as it relates to Subpart C analytics, that's where the self-identification part is, the utilization goal, the hiring benchmark, and the 44K analytics. Now, the interesting thing that I'm seeing is, especially for their contractors have a January 1 plan, those requirements in the self-identification component really just kicked in January 1. So really, as of January 1, you should have begun the process of inviting employees to participate in the voluntary self-ID and collecting disability and veteran status from applicants. But those analytics really aren't going to be done until either 6 months or 1 year into the process. So really you're talking about your January 1, 2016 plan. But what I'm starting to see is OFCCP compliance officers are asking for those analytics. Now our response has been, well, we don't have them yet because we haven't collected the data, had the full year. Some are saying they want the utilization analysis because they're saying you should have had that. So I think be on the lookout. OFCCP is now starting to ask for those analytics. You want to talk to the compliance officers. And what I have found is most compliance officers are working with contractors in this transition year. And some of the themes that I've seen is we're not going to cite you for some of these things, which they shouldn't be doing. We want to see that you're making progress towards implementation. So I think the key takeaway is if Subpart C has kicked in, and for most of you, Subpart C has already kicked in, you should be implementing, you should be collecting. If some of those things are not up and running, have a plan because you want to have the ability to show FCCP that. One last thought, that takeaway, and OFCCP has not published this yet, but the new hiring benchmark has dropped from 7.2 to 7%. So what we've seen is that the unemployment rates of veterans have actually decreased, and the percent of veterans in the workforce has decreased. And why do we think that is? Is because as unemployment goes down, the number of non-veterans in the workforce are going up, which is diluting the percent of veterans in the workforce, civilian workforce. So the new hiring benchmark, and we think OFCCP will publish this shortly, is going to be 7%. So you will be making changes to your plans to reflect the 7%. So a lot more going on. We don't have time to talk about it today. We will be talking about these things and much more in the at our April event. We hope to see you at the April event. Check out our website, the OFCCPinstitute.org, for more information about our training events, our webinars, membership, and also the 50th anniversary event. We're really excited about that. So, Mickey, as always, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it, and we hope to see you all very soon.
See you in April, folks.
See you in April. Take care.